commonly believed that many things affect the development of both civilizations and individuals, such as geography, climate, diet, and disease. But what is never given its face value in your face due is life itself. Where else are you going to look once you've look dead in the eye? One nice thing about being lost in your own home is that, even though it is an illusion, under those circumstances, it's not all that bad. Where else is there to go once you've been there and seen where go is? Continues to remain overlooked and unaccounted for the influence life exerts on itself. Under routine conditions, the mind is like a lookout atop the life of each man, which continually cautions, look out, here comes some, not you. A situation that is natural and serves him well at the common level, but one which is totally instinctive and collectively driven, and which offers no individually fulfilling nourishment to consciousness and understanding. From the ordinary approach, the only way to make any sense of the life of man is to cut it up into smaller and smaller and smaller pieces to study until it is so cut up that it makes no sense at all. At the basic instinctive level, man is as much a herd, group-oriented creature as any other beast on this planet. And under common conditions, his intellect likewise manifests itself. A situation in no way untoward, unnatural, or unexpected, but also one not closed to individual alteration and expansion. For a sheep, it is normal to go where the flock goes, and for a wolf, it is natural to feel what the pack feels, and for a man, it appears natural for him to think whatever the group he most closely identifies himself with thinks. This is not the natural way of things. This is the natural way of things, but not the way of the mystic. The acceptance of others to mentally entertain you is a sure sign of the common man. While in ordinary use, the words instinct and thought denote contrary concepts, instinct being that which is thoroughly automatic, requiring no attention, and thought being that which is willful and purposefully produced, you by now should realize that there is such a thing as instinctive thought, which is in fact what men normally experience as thought. Exhilarating individual excursions of the mind are about as close as ordinary men come to heightened states of consciousness, and in and of themselves are no small things. Comparing certain mental activities to sexual ones, ordinary men have made the comment that doing such and such thing is the most fun you can have with your clothes still on. While those on the quest might expand this to say that struggling to be conscious of life beyond the normal verbal-based concepts of existence is the most fun that they can have with their thoughts still on. To strive for anything internally unexpected, you must have something on your mind besides what's normally on your mind. Keeping a correct perspective on the possibilities facilitates increased efficiency in the use of one's energy and attention. That's the title. No matter how great, awakened, or enlightened a man becomes, he's still a man. If being ordinary is in wasting your time in ordinary matters, then being extraordinary is not in simply doing so in matters that may seem otherwise. What does the stated aim amount to? What does the stated aim amount to if the effort to get there is futile? Even if a cow learned to talk, it'd still be a talking cow. And should a man become more conscious, he does not cease being a man. The misunderstanding of this allows men to dream of a mystical state that does not exist, and thus frees them from any effort to achieve one which does. Regarding restrictions inherent in the commerce of instructions, a normal, stable mind will normally seek counsel only from a source that will not disturb its stability. Perceiving initially the above situation to involve two or more people, affix finally the same observation to the routine operations within your own individual mental processes. It turns out to be as difficult to get the mind to engage in activity that is threatening to it as it is impossible to get non-thinking creatures to commit physical suicide. Ah, yes, but the unknown transcendental beauty of it is that death, in its joyful and liberating totality, is not what men imagine it to be. And the trick now, as has always been, is to die to one level of existence while yet alive and experience a new birth of you consciously through you. One of the usually unnoted pleasures and advantages to the increased state of awareness is that for the first time a person is truly alone and aware for the first time of that source alone from which all information comes. What if a better description of it would be that it is not so much a matter of men struggling to become more conscious as it is of consciousness struggling to become more man-like? And what if an even better description would be to say that both are true? Not only from seeking an expanded influx of energy, but not only form seeking an expanded influx of energy, but energy seeking expanded forms through which to manifest itself. The mind's approach is to divide and conquer, while that of the mystics is to swallow whole and re-merge therewith. One man's thoughts turned into mush. At least he thought they did. But then began to wonder if it was actually just a case of him beginning to realize it. The reason that more men never discover anything extraordinary about life is because of the high degree to which life is on top of overall safety concerns in the workplaces in which men toil. What the mind calls reality is just the secret, sliced up into smithereens. To do his work, a mystic must have either silence or some noise. But what he cannot have is noise on the days he needs silence. Not only does everyone have a biological clock, but also what amounts to a psychological one as well. And as indication of their relative importance, consider this. Without the existence of the latter, we'd have no knowledge of the former. And someone said, "You call that an indication of relative importance?" In his morning remarks, an older monk in a monastery said, "Those on the quest must always do their best." And the younger raised the question, "Do you mean that those in search of the discovery must, at every moment of every day, be making every effort they know is possible for them, or else they are not truly of the work?" And the elder replied, and the elder, taking into consideration the tender years and the experience of the youngster, hesitated in answering the question directly as asked. There is one sure way to determine if a question you may have is foolish and useless, and that is, do you expect there to be a simple yes or no answer to it? Is it not interesting that when men miss the target, even expert marksmen tend to first look inquisitively at their pistol? A chap once pondered, "I'll bet that a mystic takes his own silence along with him wherever he goes, since noise is always available everywhere." From the mental pier, men all go a-fishing, catching next to nothing, but never get discouraged cause the sport's in just a-fishing. Legend on Another World says that those who seek the transcendental secret are no more than those who, once they realize, like everyone else does, what the game is all about, get sore about it. Yes, you're right, that one never goes. One man's present conclusion is that it's not so much a matter that listening to other people will drive you crazy as it is that listening to them can drive additional nails through your foot, helping hold you right where you are. That is, actually making it more difficult for you to drive off somewhere else. Sanity, the glue that keeps the home fires burning, and makes it possible for a man, from one day to the next, to recognize themselves. mentally. Also, an extremely subtle reason that the more conscious are so reluctant to assume a name or title. Regarding aquatic safety concerns, there's one thing for certain for which you can be thankful. Unlike the body, the mind will not drown when swamped. This, of course, leaves those curiously anxious to eventually be forced to provide not only their own new depths of water, but their private internal life preserver as well. Only the sick believe they're dying that meaningless physical death. There's always two things happening in the lives of thinking creatures: that which is actually happening in their lives and that which they think is happening. There is, in fact, more than this going on, but since men don't normally even realize these two, what's the use in pointing out any more? Lovers of the mental boogie-woogie came up with the term, "beat me, daddy ate to the bar," so as to reduce the possibility of them ever hearing patterns based on ninth or tenth notes. Whereas it can never be noted that it is in any manner less than beneficial that the stomach can readily find that which satisfies it fully, and when it is so satisfied, longs for nothing more, most would believe that something similar so is proper regarding the mind. But, you know that's not going to do for you. Come on, you knew that. Regarding the secret, there is the idea of the secret, the mythology of the secret, the philosophy of the secret, the history of the secret, the dreams of the secret, and even all kinds of other stuff about the secret. But then, you know what? There's still the old secret itself. Just a-sitting there, just a-waiting, not doing nothing, just a-sitting and a-waiting. Well, no wonder, exclaims a normally active mind. No wonder the damn thing's secret. And if what he said makes sense to you, at least you know you have a routinely active mind. For whatever that's worth. Have you yet to notice how noise can accelerate the passing of time, while silence can do otherwise? A dwarf can always find happiness as long as he finds it agreeable to suffer over the sight of knees. Another of those disadvantages of being a tad more conscious than everyone else is that the things that annoy, offend, and make everyone else acceptably ill are the very same ones which you can no longer allow yourself. The problematic realization of what's actually involved in the search. As long as an explorer keeps attempting to discover Norway in the China Sea, Norway, need I note, will remain safe from prying eyes. In another land, a certain man once asked himself, is the trick to finding the secret in knowing where it is, or in knowing how to look for it? For considerable time did he so ponder, until one day he suddenly realized there was an additional dynamic involved which he had previously overlooked entirely. Is it not interesting that men, when they miss the stake, even champion pitchers, will immediately go pick up the errant horseshoe and subject it to critical scrutiny? You like the gun better? In one extreme, what to do in an emergency class, the instructor told the students, at the very least, as soon as you hear someone say such words as, if humanity is to be saved from destroying itself, it may be necessary for, right there, you can immediately turn off your hearing aid. If making fun of the weak, the dumb, and the ordinary was to anyone's advantage, would not the enlightened continually do so? There are two primary ways by which you can be assured of staying sane, being normal, and remaining in your present familiar position. The first is to continue to perceive of yourself as somehow separate and specifically distinct from the rest of life. And the second is to continue to take the thoughts that flow through you as being individually your own. Actually, truth be told, just persisting in the latter will assure the survival of the former. Quotable updating for those of extended outlook and understanding. So noted one man, "'Tis a far better thing I will do in the future than I have ever done till now." One man became so sick and tired of trying to be more conscious that he would at times become even less so. This, according to your level of non-regulation comprehension, is either tonight's bad news or cheer-up time. On another planet, a man once wondered to himself, since it's possible to wait out, even wear out, detrimental physical addictions, and even possible to do something similar with one's ignorance and stupidity, why is it not feasible for those already a bit more conscious to use this in their struggle to become more conscious? In one galaxy exists the notion that those of greater understanding cannot have their feet affixed to any particular place. Or in the alternative, that they do, then they cannot permit themselves to be concerned about it. Too bad such an approach won't work on Earth. What? No. One day a mystic said to a crowd, "What would you people think if I told you that being there is not so much it as is a continual struggle to be there?" And after they all stood around silently for a while looking perplexed, he added, "Never mind, I'll just tell it to myself." In the matter of trying to create within yourself conditions more conducive to the discovery of the secret, do most of you now believe that it is a question of knowing exactly what to do, or more a matter of doing something, damn it, something, anything other than what is normal for you to be doing in the internal privacy of your own self? After many years spent struggling to suppress and overcome the anger he so often felt upon hearing much of what others had to say, one man, one day, in a sudden flash of miraculous insight, hit on a brilliant idea. He had just quit listening to what other people had to say. Myth tells of an ancient mystical school which, when it wanted to be permanently rid of a particular person, would send him out in the world to become a public mystical figure and teacher. No. And contemporary times tell of a man who just recently asked himself, if more people don't know what's going on in life than do, then doesn't the fact of their majority at least suggest the possibility that it is they who are in the correct position? One of the many minor joys of transcendental awareness is that, when confronted with what everyone else would consider inescapable, confounding, foolish, and meaningless mental cul-de-sacs, they can lead a man into squeals of enlightened joy. Being of transcendental awareness, see, as opposed to other people considering them foolish, moot mental cul-de-sacs, being in such a condition can, to such a person in such a condition, lead to squeals of enlightened joy. Real-time rewrites. At the silent physical level, man knows full well what life is all about. While at the mental and verbal, it all seems so uncertain and open to question. Why does not this situation itself give men some small hint? Hint. hint, hint. And finally, there was an enlightened king who one day proclaimed, all should die, but none so soon as mystics. And his court mystic smiled and said, why, thank you, my lord. While the royal priest, philosopher, warlord, and jester all stood right there, hearing it all, and not getting any of it. Still in part concerned with that lingering, irrepressible musical question of why would a sane man listen to anyone else, least what they had to say was not either helpful or entertaining. Being a rhetorical musical question, the answer is they would not. And to remind you, any way you cut it, any way you consider it, in the former category, helpful information at any normal level is always of a quite crude, quite specific, quite limited in use, and usually quite technical nature, such as someone telling you how to unclog a drain, someone telling you, showing you, or telling you how to turn on and get running your computer. That useful information. It's not that any of this is wrong. It's not that any of this is out of the toward category. Out of the land of toward. Somebody write a story to fit that. But I do not want a little girl with a dog. I got it. Delilah in the land of toward. At any rate, at the public level, at any ordinary level, all you've got to do is think about it a second, and there is really no information being passed about of a helpful nature. Actual helpful, by anybody's definition, that the person who gets it, who hears the information, says, and we're taking their word for it, who says that that was helpful. I can use that. It is always of a quite limited, a quite specific, and almost without exception, I should say without exception, it is of a physical nature. The other category would seem to be, or I'm describing as, is entertaining. Which entertaining, you do not expect it to be useful. You don't expect to read a book or go to a movie or hear someone tell a joke and to find it useful. It is simply neurally entertaining. It tickles the nervous system up at the high end where it hears and translates the sound waves from one tongue to your ear, and it does something. Even the first category, of course, operating on the same basis, but your nervous system takes it in as being useful. That I should remember that. I can use that. It will be of practical value to me, or can be. And the second category is distinguished by the fact that it has no particular use to it. There is no practical value to speech which is entertaining. But now let's consider this. To tie in, if you recall last time, and I was going to try and bring in something additional to this specifically, but if you recall last time, I was also trying to get you to consider the matter that if you mentally deal with what seems to be questions, what seems to be areas open to some discussion, where there's some discussion, if you deal with them on the basis of the question, if you deal with it on the basis in which the question is normally considered by the public, and I was using last time, I just pulled out more or less an contemporaneous archetypical one of someone asked an economist, someone asked a world leader, so let's say an expert economist, they say, well, is our local economy going to stay somewhat depressed as long as our trade imbalance remains at its high level? And the expert goes, I would say that our local economy is going to continue to experience the present depressed condition as long as our trade imbalance remains at this present level. Not ridiculing it, not doing a satire, but I was pointing out for one particular reason last time the fact that this goes unnoticed, that people apparently, even people with some expertise, some proclaimed expertise, spend at least part of their time responding to a question, whereas their response is in part just simply a repetition of the question, which saves them from 50% of the effort to act expertisely, which is still not the only point. Another point being, the main point being, that if you have any desire to understand what's going on in life, you must realize that by so dealing with apparent important questions of whatever nature, as long as you do it on the basis that everyone else, including experts, including someone who asks you, but as long as you do it on the basis that everyone else considers the problem to rest, that is the way in which they will express it, then you are confined to forever no more than what they understand, which is, how do you spell zilch? Zip, nada. You're confined to that you are simply whistling up a very large dragon's ass to believe that you will ever understand any more about what's going on in life. I'm sorry, a real dark night. I don't want those Disney attorneys contacting me again. At any rate, so both of those, and I was going to try to do something with both of them tonight to drag you into a somewhat wider area. But to give another example, the political one sounds pretty hard-nosed, right up to date, which would sound as though if you were asking an economist his idea, his view of the economy, the impact that our international imbalance of trade has on the local fiscal affairs, then whatever he says, you would assume that the whole basis of such a conversation would be on the basis that it would be of some utilitarian, or would serve some utilitarian purpose, at least potentially, to listen to the man. That whatever he has to say has potential practical use. What I wanted to do, even though I mentioned it last time, I didn't get into any particular areas. This is not simply true on that crude level, not on just the level on which it would seem to be that people are engaged in conversation to try one person to another to try to elicit information and listen to the person whom they question to gain information that's of use. Let's go into areas that appear to be more esoteric, that appear to leave that first category at first blush, such as you ask a priest, you ask a guru, some spiritual figure, or those of you that see the parallels, or you could ask a psychologist or a sociologist. You ask them some question such as, it seems to be of seems to be almost entirely of a spiritual or mental or psychological nature. In other words, far removed from the world of monetary affairs. That you ask a priest, rabbi, guru, psychologist, sociologist, social commentator, but you ask someone, I'll just pull out another common, currently expressed question. You ask this person, you say, do you believe that the continuing portrayal of violence in our common forms of popular forms of entertainment like the movies, do you believe that that is directly contributing to the rise in teenage crime? And you ask, here it is, assistant pope, chief rabbi of some group somewhere, a great renowned psychologist, sociologist, and you ask them that. And they go, there is no doubt the violence that our popular forms of entertainment, especially the movies, the kind of violence that presents to our young is obviously part of what is responsible for the increase in crime rate. And everybody goes, well, my. Now here it is, someone that you would think is involved. The reason that I bring out my example from last time is I'm trying to get you to start off with a kind of juxtaposition. One starting off that seemed to be very straightforward, pretty well subject to a binary-based yes or no answer that you ask an economist, is our financial affairs going to improve or not improve as long as the trade imbalance remains? And he goes, well, not improve. Or whatever it is. Do you think that interest rates are going up next quarter or down? Well, down. In other words, it seems to be. Subject to a direct answer, it seems to be best approached. Anything that he might know, anything in the area would be best approached. And probably only efficiently approached by direct questions. In other words, if your interest is in your pocketbook, what interest, and why would you ask vague theoretical questions? Why would you begin to ask such things as, do you think that Keynesian economics and something, or do you think laissez-faire economic models are per force, intrinsically, antipodal to any more socially conscious-based, read Marxism, socialism model? Now, there are people who sit around and make some sort of living writing about such things. But you understand, if we're back to the level, trying to give you some comparison, and we're talking about an individual asking an economist a question based upon the fact that you're asking on the basis of practical interest, you're not going to ask that kind of theoretical question. You're going to ask a question based on the fact that, do you think I should invest in the money market or in government bills? In other words, which way is the interest rate going to go? That's all you care about, on the basis of it being practical. What I'm trying to do, to give us somewhere to push off from the edge of the pool into a deeper end, is to push off against that and now consider that if we leave a world of politics and economics into a world that truly seems to be esoteric, that seems to be of a much higher scale in one sense, the world of man's spirituality, the world of man's inner life, and then you go ask a priest, a psychologist, do you think that it is the portrayal, the continual portrayal and presentation of violence in the movies and television that is the cause of this increase in teenage violence and disrespect for human property and life? I mean, it sounds like a decent question. And here's the person, the Pope, the world's most famous psychologist, some well-renowned psychologist, and he goes, just for a second, just to be thoughtful, but he will immediately respond to the question the way in which you ask it. And I say you, it could have been, again, some reporter with a 6th grade education reading the notes of somebody. In other words, he is just a mouthpiece. That's what I want you to consider, which is neither here nor there toward the news media. But it is a person, a mind, a tongue asking a question, and they set out the parameters, or they set the verbal context of the question, regardless of whether it sounds significant, but they set it up. And then a so-called expert, a world-renowned expert, will go, well, as though he was thinking that very thing, and he responds on that basis. All right, now there's two things I'm trying to run sort of parallel, if not intertwined. Let's leave that for a second and back to where the area in which I was pointing. That is, whether information, why would an ordinary man listen to any information were it not either useful or entertaining? Man goes to a priest for advice, goes to a spiritual guru, goes to a psychologist, a psychiatrist, for advice not on fiscal matters, but on internal, spiritual, psychological, metaphysical matters. And the priest, the rabbi, the spiritual leader, the psychiatrist listens to your question and gives you his best, valid, professionally based response. That you go to a priest or a rabbi or a psychiatrist almost in a state of desperation, saying, I must have help with this particular problem. I need counseling, I need direction, I need advice. And they say, well, calm down, sit down, tell me what it is. And they listen, well. And then they give you their advice. They give you their counsel. They give you direction. In some cases, direction is they attempt to pass along directly from the gods. Well, here's what you should do. Here's exactly how you should handle this situation. Back to my still fictitious, my What's known in the law as a fiction, a sane man, a reasonable person. Back to him, he goes there and he solicits the advice from a priest, spiritual guru, psychiatrist. And he listens. The information is useless. The information does not work. Everybody knows that. If you do not know that, or if you would sit there right now and go, well, that's not true, then you have just left the fictional, at least the legal fictional world of a reasonable man. You have gone into a new territory. You are now out there somewhere off the main road. You're outside the main grazing fields. You're somewhere up in the hills, down in the valleys. You're away from the rest of us. A reasonable man, he knows. Now, I'm fully aware, as you are, that this is not the way it operates within a reasonable, ordinary, sane man's life. He does not go when he is being beset by some personal problems that are enough that really drives him to go seek professional help from a priest or a rabbi or a psychiatrist. He does not go there asking the advice and hearing the advice. He does not then go, this is not going to work. We know that is not the way life's arranged. But now remember to take the basis that the only information that a reasonable man would listen to, that he would tolerate, that he would solicit, would be information that is either useful to him or titillates, just entertains his nervous system, his neural faculties. That's only two things, that's it. So now listen to me. So a man, even though he doesn't think about it this way at the time, life is not arranged that way, it's not supposed to be. That this man goes seeking what he considers in this case, seeking specific practical information. That he goes to the priest, the rabbi, the guru, the psychiatrist, not to discuss theological theory, not to discuss the conflicting schools of Freudian versus Jungian thought or philosophy or psychology. He's going there, there's something deeply is troubling him to the point that he goes and seeks counsel. He seeks information from another source. So when he goes now to someone who is an expert, who is recognized in the collective world of man as being an expert, not in fields of finances, politics, plumbing, air conditioning, but in areas more metaphysical. The world of the spirit, the world of the mind. He goes there, but in this case, I'm telling you, he goes there seeking information that is, in this case, useful. That he can say, I am going crazy if someone doesn't help me. Or he can say, I feel suicidal because I worry so much. I am so depressed. And so he solicits either spiritual advice from a religious source or psychological advice from a psychiatric source. But even though life is not arranged for him to think at the time, if he remains within the mainstream of life, if he still fits the common definition of a reasonable, rational man, after he listens to the advice, he may say, I feel much better. Thank you. Thank you, Father. Thank you, Doctor. He pays the man or kisses his ring. I mean, he goes out and he's crying. He feels better. Give him a few minutes to get over it, a few hours to calm down. And what I'm saying is you go into that man's consciousness, and if he is still sane and reasonable, and you go, well, we saw that. That was nice. Now, what did you think? And he says, I'm glad I went. I feel better. And I said, all right, the specific advice that the priest gave you, the psychiatrist gave you, you know that the advice he gave you won't work. You know it's useless, don't you? Unless he lapses, unless he then strays from being reasonable and sane, he knows. Now, this is all a dirty trick because it would almost be impossible, even if you could do it, it would be a dirty trick to get an ordinary man's mind into such a position. But do you understand what I'm saying? That just based upon the common concepts of sequential logic and reason, the sane operations of the human brain, the man, if I say, you know that advice he gave you, well, such things, I mean, obvious ones being, a man says, well, my wife, he goes to a priest or a psychiatrist and says, my wife, my husband, but my wife of 40 years died yesterday or last week. And I thought I could get over it. She'd been sick several times. But I'm going to tell you, Father, Doctor, I am devastated to the point that I have seriously contemplated suicide several times in the last week. My friend said I'd get over it, this and that. And I thought, I took a few pills. I thought, well, I will get over it. But I'm telling you, right this minute, I am so heartbroken. My life seems so void without her. I swear, I don't know how I can go on living. I'm about to commit suicide, and I don't want to. I just don't know what to do. All right, the obvious one, the most common being, a priest, any religious person of almost any persuasion on this planet, would say to the person, at the very least, they'd say, well, I understand that. We've all lost loved ones, but remember this. There'll be a day of judgment. There'll be a day after death when we're all, there's a life after this when you will be back with your wife. And the person said, well, I know I've heard that. And the priest comes over and he puts his arm around him, comforts him, and says, well, it says right here, it says it 400 times in the Bible, or it says it 270 times in the Quran, or here in the Buddhist literature, over and over, or here in the Hindu scriptures, you can see it within the script, over and over, references to a future life. She is not gone. You'll be with her after death. So let's say the person feels better. It happens all the time. They get up and leave. But what I'm saying is, you wouldn't do it. The mind could not. An ordinary man's mind couldn't do it. But I'm saying, as long as he still fits the definition of being reasonable and sane, after he feels somewhat better and leaves after this conference with a priest, let's say, and you go to him, you go, well, I heard all that, and do you feel better? And the man says, yes, I feel much better. I in no wise right now feel suicidal. He sort of opened my eyes. I mean, he pointed out the reality of it to me, that I will be with her someday again. And you go, well, that was very useful, your visit. Oh, yes, it was. If he could still say sane and sober by his own definition, by humanity's definition, and I go, that's just bullshit. I mean, it's just dreams. I mean, you went to seek out a professional, you went to seek out a man who has had 20 years of study in your religion. He has degrees in theology. He is recognized, and he made you feel better. He is known as damn near a walking saint. Yes, yes, yes. But you do realize that information is useless. What good does it do you? Is there any practical value of that information? Is all I'm trying to get you to see in a very non-standard, non-expected way with most people. And the answer is no. It's of no use whatsoever. The words sound good, and it fits the man's problem. Him saying, well, I can't live without my wife. And someone says, well, she's not actually dead. She just kind of disappeared. And after you die, you're in another state, and you'll be with her somewhere. That sounds good, but as far as it being useful, the man might as well recite the alphabet backwards. He might as well read the ingredients off a box of Cheerios that was printed in Arabic. As far as the information being useful, that you hear, well, I can go and stop my toilet. Well, now, I see what will make I see now how I can set the points on my car. It has no use. There is no practical value to telling somebody, well, after you die, you'll find out you're not actually dead, you're alive. And they go, thank goodness. Which that's part of what civilization, that's part of what the mind's about, for them to go, oh, thank goodness. But is that of any practical use? And the answer is no. But more than that, notice, it is no one's common view. It is no one ever gets a glimpse of life operating that way. Oh, now we all know that there are plenty of people who are anti-religious. All kinds of ordinary people could hear me make some comment such as that and go, yeah, you're right. Religion's just a bunch of baloney, and they're just hypnotizing people and fooling them and taking their money. No, that's not true. Those people don't understand any more than those who are die-hard religious folk. But just notice, ordinary men cannot see, and it's not just religious. I just use that because it had the potential probably of striking most people in their heartstrings, having to do with deaths of loved ones, etc. But people go to a psychiatrist on the same basis, and they'll say, I am so depressed. I have such phobias. Or just, I'm so depressed, and I don't know why, and I'm almost suicidal. A psychiatrist normally, because of different work habits, they normally do not offer such abrupt, immediate, even the appearance of abrupt, immediate help as a priest would. They work in different time frames. But at any rate, any ordinary, well-thinking, well-meaning psychiatrist, if confronted by someone suddenly gets in his office some way and says, I am to the point, I'm suicidal, I am so depressed, I'm literally contemplating suicide, can you help me? The psychiatrist would offer something. The psychiatrist would want to, listen to some of them and say, well, listen, we've got to calm you down. Even before he tries to pitch him on coming in for, sign up for weekly counseling. He would, if he understood that the man was serious in his threats of how suicidal he instantly was, the psychiatrist would offer something resembling what the priest did. That is, he would offer what would appear to be information. I just have to make up something sort of in general. He would just have to start telling the man such things as, well, listen, I heard what you said, and even you said that you're not quite sure the source of your depression. There's been a few setbacks in your life, you said, but you're not even sure. It's just this kind of vague uneasiness that leads to damn near pathological depression. And you go, yeah. And he said, all right, this probably, I cannot give you an instant cure on the spot, but now sit down and let me tell you this. Forget the ideas of suicide, forget the ideas that you are in such a state of depression from which there is no release. Let me tell you to begin with, the state you described, I've been in this business, I've been in this profession for 20 years now, and I must tell you the state that you have described is no worse than I am confronted with on a daily basis. Now really, I want you to understand that. And you go, really? And you go, I'm serious. I know. I mean, in fact, I suffer from some depression myself, and we'll get into that. If you become my patient, I'll be glad to tell you about it at some future time. But what I want you to understand, as singularly threatening and serious as seems your particular case of depression, which is all you can right now experience, that's all you're aware of, is how bad you feel. But all I want to tell you is, rather than you feeling as though that all of the woes, all of the uncertain or unspecified burdens of the world have fallen upon you, I want you to understand that this is a very common experience, especially in America, especially in our day and time. All right, so let's say something along those lines, at least for the immediacy of the man just walking in cold on this psychiatrist. So let's say he thanks the man and offers to pay him and leaves, and we give him a few hours in the same way we did with my previous example of a man who just left the counseling of a priest or rabbi, that we go into this man and say, well, you seem to feel better. He goes, yes, I do. So it was worthwhile going to see the psychiatrist. Oh, yes, it was. And so what he said to you was obviously useful. Oh, yes. Again, there the man sits. We're not calling the man an idiot. We're not calling him a fool. He is now. We've seen him 2 hours later, and it's just obvious by anyone's observation that he is in a much calmer state. And we even ask him. He says, oh, yes. Right now, ideas of suicide are just foreign to me. It's hard for me to believe that 2 hours ago I was really that depressed, which it wasn't the first time, but right now. And you say, well, I heard what he told you. And you go, okay. And you go, you do understand that that has no value whatsoever. But in the same way you understand, it apparently, that him saying that he was so depressed, he felt as though everybody hated him, he felt as though there was no possible future for him. And he didn't really know why. He just felt so depressed that suicide, death itself, seemed to hold out promise to him and the psychiatrist. Just making it up on the spot as I did, that for an immediate, a professional reaction to the man, he at least went into the verbal sketching of how this condition is not singular to that man, how the degree to which he is experiencing it and expressing it is in no wise unusual, and etc., etc. Now we all understand that at the ordinary level, it is not surprising that the man would leave and say he felt better. Just on those that the man describing, listen, I know how bad you feel. I'm a professional. I see it day in and day out. You're in and you're out. And I'm not discounting it, sir. But you walked in on me, I've never seen you before, and we don't have time right now to go in the background because I'm concerned. You say you're suicidal, and I take that seriously. But what I want you to understand is, I am a professional. I see this day in and day out. And as much as I know right now that it is troubling you, I want you to understand, I'm telling you, my word, my professional word, the degree to which you're feeling it is in no wise unusual. And do not feel that there is no hope. It can be treated. Just that alone, the words, we understand the same way in the priest, telling the person suffering on the death of a loved one that, well, that's all right, you'll be with her again someday in another life. That in both cases, let us say that the person is a sane, reasonable, rational man or woman, they leave the priest, they leave the psychiatrist's office, and they feel better on the basis of the information conveyed. But now in this sense, we go to the person who just left the psychiatrist and say, well, now he told you that it was very common for people to feel that way and that there was nothing unusual to not only you feeling that way, but to the degree, to the intensity to which you felt the depression. The guy goes, yeah. And we say, do you realize that that is useless? Of what value is that? Now, other than the fact that he feels better. See, this is why one reason, this is not why, but it would be one of the difficulties of even getting ordinary people to listen to any of this long enough to get anything out of it, assuming there's any possibility. Because we've already admitted, I'm saying it works. And I'm telling you, it's a sane, ordinary, rational person. That they're not in a dream world. They have not been hypnotized by religion or by psychiatry. They have not suddenly become intellectually dense. It worked. They say they feel better. We're taking their word for it. But then you understand what the mind can't do, and I'm now really falling into a rhetorical area just between you and I, when I say that if we ask the man, is that information actually useful? And he goes, well, I feel better. And I go, yeah. But the words, what he told you, that other people feel this way, you don't even know whether it's true or not. He told you it was. But even if it is true, of what use is that? What practical use is that? Can you use that to go in to the kitchen and repair the short in your toaster? Is it of any practical use? Is it even true, is the point? Because if it's not of practical use, what is it? It's mere entertainment. It's neural excitement. It is of no value. And such information is of no value. It has no practical use. Why do people listen to it? The world is full, I point out to you again, of people who would agree. Ordinary minds go, you're right. And all we would have are people who, as their hobby, are anti-religious or anti-psychiatry. Yeah, you're right, it's just all a bunch of hooey. Why do they listen? Here's the better one. Here's where we're getting to. Why do they listen to, my case is tonight, the priest and the psychiatrist. Why do they listen to the information, take it to be useful, know it's not, and refuse to recognize it for what it is? I repeat. And this is not the burden, it's not the responsibility of individual people, I should say. Why do you thinketh that life beeth arranged soeth, that ordinary, sane, rational people seek information, that is, help, but they seek it by way of information, that they go to everywhere in the metaphysical area, the non-physical area. Not to economists, not to plumbers, not to mechanics. They go to everything from priest to psychiatrist, seeking information that they think is for a practical reason, that I am feeling suicidal, can you help me? And they go, yes, and they apparently do. Why is life arranged in such a way that when they go seeking that kind of useful information, they're not going to a priest to engage in some theoretical discussion about how many pins would it take, to prick the feet of 10,000 rocket dancing angels. It's not to engage in any theoretical discussion, but they go there wanting specific information. They get the information and know that it's of no use, One thing, they know it's of no use. They know it has no practical value whatsoever to tell somebody, don't worry, someday after you die, you'll be alive. Of what value, of what practical use is that? None. And they know it. Why is life arranged to where they go seek such advice, information, they listen to it, and apparently accept it, or say they do accept it? One is, they know it's of no useful value. Two, they refuse, or they're incapable of seeing that it is not even intended. It is not even in the category of useful knowledge, useful information. Once you see it, there's not even the pretense. I mean, of course, everybody involved that does not understand the situation, you can say they pretend. It's like a psychiatrist pretending to be a psychiatrist, a priest pretending to be a priest, and an ordinary John Q. public attempting to pretend to be John Q. whoever he is. They cannot see directly that the information is not useful. It has no practical use. They do not see that the reason they do it is because it entertains them. It doesn't help them. It has no practical use. It is not in the first category of being useful information. It's entertaining information. And why do they not see that only something transcendental, only something beyond that, which, to put the name I've been using, the mystical, is the only thing that is both useful and entertaining? That means fini in Italian. Or in the Harry Palm Society. That's